Zombie games. Zombie games have been popular for a really long time. There's something so intriguing about being able to put yourself in the midst of a zombie apocalypse and see if you'd survive, or in most cases, find out just how quickly you would not survive. There are seemingly endless takes on what a zombie game should be, from the slower-paced, gritty, realism-focused games with the familiar, slow-moving Night of the Living Dead-style zombies, to the high-action, fast-paced environments with superhuman zombies that can jump buildings, fly, spit acid, and probably correctly do your taxes from the way they behave sometimes. As someone who prefers the most realistic experience possible, I spent many years feeling like I had to settle for games that got the closest to what I wanted, often compromising some pretty core elements that I was looking for. But over the years, the genre's come a long way, and now it really does feel like there's an experience to fit everybody's preferences. And that's sort of what I'm here to show with this video. I tried to get a pretty wide array of experiences and gameplay styles and included several games I've never even played before, and honestly fell in love with several of them. My backlog only continues to take hits, perhaps never more aggressively than what this video has done to it. I played 20 zombie games for 2 hours each to find the best ones. A few things before we get started. Obviously, most of these games are far bigger than their first 2 hours, so what I'm reviewing here are the first impressions the game makes. What kind of promise does it show? What's the atmosphere like? How much do I want to keep playing it after my 2 hours? Basically, how fast does the infection spread once the game bites you, if it has any teeth at all? I'm pretty excited about this video. As I said, I found several games that I wanted to continue playing, and there are just so many different types of experiences to be had from the games in this video. I'm confident you'll find something new to try, or hopefully get the nudge you needed to try some of the others. I also stream some of the games I play for these videos over at twitch.tv/jgigs, so if you ever wanted to come hang out and see more of the full experience I have with these games, we'd love to have you. All that being said, hello everybody, my name's Markiplier, and welcome to my video about zombie games. We'll kick things off with Deadpoly. This is definitely one of the sillier zombie games in the video. It does not seem to be going for anything remotely difficult or immersive. Like, there are technically some survival elements here, but they're mostly a formality, and the zombies are just kind of here. They don't feel like a huge threat or anything. The big thing with this game seems to be all the different items there are to find and collect in the world. At least that's what I've gotten from the times I've played. I will also say this game is exponentially more fun if you're playing with someone, which is how I experienced it the first time I played. It's a lot easier to get into the silliness of it all. Exploring was way more fun, and getting back to the base and showing off what we both found was always really goofy. Playing alone, it's just kind of quiet and there isn't really as much to get into, which in some ways is exactly what I'm looking for in a zombie game, but you just don't get the energy of it here, which again is fine because it's obviously not going for that. There is some building and it's fine. It's all fine. I don't think this is a bad game at all, just to be clear. I like what they're going for and I definitely think there's space for it, but it's just not really a zombie survival game experience. It's like an exploration item collection game that happens to have zombies in it. You will not believe how much stuff there is, and none of it matters, but it's all just fun. There are all kinds of weapons and clothes and random trinkets like this little Among Us toy, PC parts, holiday themed decorations, arcade games, neon signs, a bunch of vehicles, just so much stuff. You can place it all down and decorate however you like. There's a lot of different stuff you can hang on the walls, so if you like the idea of decorating a base with a bunch of random silly stuff, you will like this. It also plays pretty well for the most part. I did drown once because I hit control while I was swimming and wanted to see if diving was a thing, which it was, but then nothing I did made me swim back up. Spacebar didn't work, looking up and swimming didn't do it, so I went into the controls to see what the button was, and there's only a button for swimming down, so I guess just don't do that. Other than that, it plays really well though. I didn't find them in this playthrough, but there are bunkers that usually have a bunch of cool weapons in them, as well as weapon parts and different military armor, and sometimes little mysteries to get into. It has online servers. I'm not sure how active they are, but I bet you could get into some stuff if you found one that was populated. But honestly, my suggestion is if you're gonna play this, get at least one friend to hop in with you. It's a lot more fun that way. Again, there's nothing really wrong with Deadpoly. I think it is precisely what they wanted it to be, and for what it is, it can be a lot of fun. But if you're looking for an actual zombie survival experience, there are much better ones to come in the video. Up next is Dysmantle. This one came highly recommended in the comments of my last video about survival games, and this is a pretty cool little game. It's a bit of a different vibe than your typical open world zombie survival game. We were saying in the stream it sort of has old console vibes, like it feels like a PS2 game, but in a good way. There's quite a bit going on with this one. It does seem open world to a degree, and you do get to see some glimpses of the fact that at some point you'll unlock the ability to start building and farming and sort of developing your homestead, which I'm very interested in but did not make it to in my 2 hours. This game is a lot of familiar ideas sort of broken down into simpler versions, but they all work really well. You start out with a crowbar and a backpack, and the crowbar is your weapon as well as your tool for gathering everything, and what you're able to destroy depends on how much you've leveled it up. You have a few inventory slots where it will automatically stack a certain number of whatever items you pick up, and as you upgrade it, you'll get more slots as well as potential for bigger stacks. And every time you use a campfire, it will just auto dump everything into the chest that is also at each campfire. You can also just use the chest to automatically store stuff if you don't want to use the campfire, because early on, every time you use the campfire, all the enemies in the area respawn, and that gets old really fast. One of the first big missions you're working on is building a kit you can use on these towers. And one of the things you can do once you unlock that tool is install something that prevents enemies from respawning within range of the tower, which is quite a game changer. It took me about 2 hours to make this happen, and even though I was basically done when I accomplished this, I was still pretty excited about the idea that stuff wouldn't be respawning anymore, because some areas are quite crowded, and the combat isn't necessarily bad, but it's not amazing either. I was definitely over it. There's a tree of things to unlock, most of which were honestly pretty uninteresting to me. I found myself mainly concerned with doing what I needed to do for the tower, as well as getting to level 9 so I could unlock the building kit and start working on my base and getting a farm going and all that. As someone who tends to enjoy the more realistic zombie games, this is a bit of a far cry from what I would typically play, and while it's not one I'm likely to play again, I do think it's a really solid game, with developers who seem to be really on top of things. There are a few DLC packs you can buy that seem to add quite a bit to the game as well, one of which being pets that I think would be pretty cool. There's a lot of lore to uncover in the world, a lot of things to collect and discover for those of you who like having long checklists of sorts to work on in your games, and again, kind of a surprising amount of content and things to do. I'd say if you're looking for something a little more lighthearted than the heavy, grungy, realistic zombie survival game, and what you've seen here does anything for you, Dysmantle is probably worth checking out. Moving on, we have Surroundead, and this is shaping up to be an incredible game. It might be a little bit early to say this, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It's showing potential to someday be near the top of the list of zombie games. There are a few that I don't think it could ever surpass, but it could carve out its own space higher in the list for sure. It's in early access right now, and in some ways that's gonna be very apparent, like this glitchy wolf orgy I happened upon, for example. But it's doing so many things right, and I'm so excited to see this game continue to develop. One of the really cool things about this graphical style is it seems to make a lot of things easier, so a lot of the systems here can go really deep and it won't bog the game down. Don't let the art style fool you though. This is a really gritty, rough zombie survival game that really hones in on the details. The world is going to feel very empty and quiet at times, which is something I really appreciate when the tone is right, and it's definitely right here. The amount of times in other games I'll be miles deep in the woods and have a group of zombies spring out on me from behind a tree or something and literally say out loud, "Why? What are you doing here?" is too high, damn it. I'm not saying there should never be zombies in the woods, but we all know damn well some of these games just spawn zombies around you sometimes, and I hate it. Surroundead has just about everything you'd want in an open world, realistic zombie survival experience, and if you're finding that this video has everything you're wanting in zombie game reviews, think about hitting that like button and subscribing if you like that idea. There are hunger and thirst mechanics, different injuries and wounds to manage. There's some radioactive areas on the map, which is something I assume you'll start worrying about later on. The melee combat is okay enough. The gunplay, however, is surprisingly good, and it sounds excellent. There seems to be a pretty wide selection of weapons, some of which almost having like unique status, with a lot of different attachments and ammo types. It's a game where you will be loading your own magazines, no hitting R and magically having a full magazine here, although R will work if you have extra mags loaded and ready to go. There is some crafting and building that I assume gets pretty extensive, but I didn't get to it in my 2 hours. I say I assume it gets extensive because while I didn't build anything, I did find quite a few random building pieces, several of which were different light fixtures. So I just kind of think if there are that many different kinds of lights that I never even found the same one twice, the building is probably pretty deep. The game isn't unbearably difficult once you get the timing down on melee combat, although it will get difficult quick if you're reckless. I had a moderately manageable time because for the most part I was staying pretty stealthy and trying to never fight more than 1 or 2 zombies at a time, except for here when I wanted to test the gunplay and I just kind of went crazy for a minute. Another thing I think is really cool here is that you're not the only human in this world. There are a few safe camps around the map as well as wandering traders and other NPCs, and sometimes they're friendly and sometimes they're not. I really like that a lot. I think it adds a whole new layer to the gameplay and makes the world feel that much more believable and alive. I really hope as the game continues to develop, they stay as focused on the details as they are now and implement more opportunities to get immersed. While I like that you can turn any storage containers you find into your own and basically have a base anywhere, I would love to see it taken a step further and let you do things like use beds you find. Like in this hospital I was looting and considering turning into a base. There were no interaction options with the beds, which was mildly disappointing. In no way would it be a deal breaker or anything, but it's just one small example of feeling disconnected from the world. And I'm someone who really loves the immersion in these types of games. I wouldn't hate to see looting get a bit harder over time either. It's kind of easy to get kitted up pretty quickly here. But again, none of this is really a big deal, and it might even be for the best while the game is in early access. I do also hope to see multiplayer at some point, as I think playing with a friend or two would be fun. And I think there's a lot of potential here for public servers to be a lot of fun. All in all, this is a fantastic game, even in the state it's in, and if they stay on the path they seem to be on with this game, it could very well be one of the better games in the zombie genre someday. Surroundead is one I highly recommend. Up next is 10 Miles to Safety, and it's a bit of a different type of game for the genre. It's another one that gives off very original Xbox/PlayStation vibes, which is not a problem at all. That's just how it feels to me, so I'm saying it. Basically, you wake up in a hospital in the midst of the zombie outbreak, and you hear on the radio that you have about 10 miles to travel to make it to the safe point. One thing I think this game did really well is building the environment and setting the tone. You'll see other people running scared, getting attacked and killed by zombies. You'll see people fighting and police officers trying to shoot zombies and save people. It's all very chaotic. You'll come across random encounters where you have to save people who will sometimes join your squad, all of which seem to just trigger a horde challenge. There also seem to be certain checkpoints you hit that also trigger horde challenges. The horde challenges are obnoxious. I feel like they last entirely too long, and if you're even slightly behind on equipment, you are going to struggle. The people you're trying to save will sometimes get in your way as well, and you'll unintentionally kill them. You can't keep making progress at night. Once the sun goes down, a circle of light surrounds you and you're unable to leave it until morning. And inside that circle, you'll be attacked by much stronger zombies than you were during the day. The goal is to find a shelter that you can barricade yourself into and defend, and then keep moving when it's over. It all sounds fine in concept, and I reckon it is, but I really just don't like this game. This was one of the harder 2 hours for me to get through of any of the videos I've done. I just found myself annoyed for most of the time I was playing it. Like, it's mostly fine. I think if you're into this kind of thing, then it's great. This is just not my cup of tea. There are also some really annoying things, like I got through the checkpoint, looted the reward chest that finally gave me a backpack and some better weapons, but then I died because running through the docks I couldn't find any shelter at night. And when I respawned back at the checkpoint, my new items were gone, but the chest was also empty. So like, I was already way underpowered with the new gear from the chest. So what the hell was I supposed to do now that I was stuck with what I had before? And that was basically it. I just kept dying in the docks because I couldn't find anything strong enough to kill the nighttime zombies in less than 14 shots. And there was no shelter. Even aside from the things that specifically annoyed me about it, like the hordes lasting way too long and stuff, I think this is just really not my thing. And that's fine. It doesn't seem like it's objectively poorly made or anything. It plays pretty well and has a lot of cool stuff going on. If you like stuff like this, I see no reason you wouldn't like it, but as for myself, I will probably never load 10 miles to safety up again. Up next is Into the Dead: Our Darkest Days, and I love this game. It is so cool, man. I've never really played anything like it, although if memory serves, I think it seems similar to this War of Mine, which is one I'm gonna have to check out now after how much I enjoyed this. It's just so different from anything else I typically play. I want to start with the aesthetic and atmosphere of this game. What an incredible job they did building this world. It's so well designed that you kind of forget you can only really move left and right. There's so much depth to these maps, and it's just so believable, and the graphics are great. The sound design is also excellent. It all just makes it really easy to get immersed and feel the tension of whatever situation you find yourself in. It's a very unforgiving, brutal game as well, so it all just comes together in a way that captures the essence of what you'd think a zombie apocalypse might feel like. I was also really impressed with the mechanics of the game. It seems like this style would limit you in what you're able to do with your character, but I really never even noticed it. Again, you sort of forget that the maps aren't actually as deep as they look. You're going to want to be stealthy most of the time, and things like pressing against the door while you're crouched, allowing you to look through it without alerting what's on the other side, but with very limited vision, or the different points in any given area for you to slip into and hide, and the verticality in all the different areas. You're really able to do pretty much whatever you think you'd want to do in these situations. It's a very slow-paced game. It's very intense, so it doesn't always feel like it's slow-paced, but most of the gameplay is slower-paced. You'll start with the duo of your choice, of which there are several, and you'll assign them tasks for each portion of the day. So for example, if you want one person to leave the base and scavenge, you'll take them to that workstation, decide where they'll go and which items they'll take, and then assign your other person something to do while they're gone, like cook or build or repair barricades, with a lot more options becoming available as you obtain more materials and can build more and better workstations, as well as move into bigger and better bases that offer more amenities of sorts, like a garden for example. Once you have everything doing what you want them to do, you'll advance that portion of the day, and whoever you send out to scavenge will be who you take control over, and then you'll do your thing. The game remembers everything you do in the locations in which you do it, so if things start to look sketchy and you feel like it's not a good idea to keep pushing, you can always go back home, regroup, unload the inventory, and head back another time, and even with another character when you're better prepared. When someone dies, they're dead forever. I lost Wayne in a very unfortunate series of events on a scavenging run. I had decided to retreat since I was in pretty bad shape, so I left the way I came, but on the way out there was a zombie under a car that wasn't there when I arrived, and it caught me off guard and killed him. I was able to go and loot everything he was carrying later, but the impact of him dying hit the rest of the team pretty hard. You see, we'd also recruited a few people along the way as well. On top of just the gameplay loop we've talked about, the world seems to be full of little secrets and mysteries and things to find and do, and every location was just so fun and interesting to explore and loot. Whoever designed these levels really deserves some credit here because they are just incredible. I can't get over how amazing this game looks and feels to play, and how well they nailed the atmosphere. The zombies aren't obnoxious or over the top, but still very intense and unsettling, especially when you can hear them and not see them. And you do have to be careful about fighting them, especially when there's more than one, because it can get out of hand pretty quickly. I really love this game. I'll continue playing it without a doubt, and I'm so glad I found it while looking at games for this video because I'd never even heard of it before. and now it's one of my favorite games I've played this year. Fantastic game. I highly recommend everyone check out Into the Dead: Our Darkest Days. Next is Dead Island 2, and I'm actually shocked at how much fun I had here. I was not expecting that at all. And it's not because I don't think the Dead Island games are good or anything like that. I actually remember putting a bunch of time into the first one on my Xbox 360 way back in the day and loving every minute of it. I think I was under the impression that I just was not into these kinds of games anymore, and I'm not entirely sure if I have a reason for that. Learned something about myself making this video. How about that? This game is just really fun, man. It's pretty silly in some ways, and it clearly isn't taking itself too seriously. It's not really trying to give you a super realistic zombie survival type experience, but that's not to say the world isn't really well built and that the zombies aren't good. It's just a little more arcadey, perhaps, is the word I'm looking for. You choose which character you want to be, and you're locked in with them for the entire playthrough, apparently. Each character has their own strengths and weaknesses. Most of the NPCs I encountered had pretty reasonable dialogue and decent voice acting, but your character will typically just be rattling off Arnold Schwarzenegger-style tough guy movie lines. Kind of cheesy, but it's fine. I think the longer you play, the more the game is going to open up, eventually becoming an open world. I feel like that's what Dead Island did too, but it's been over a decade since I played it, so I could be wrong. As for the world, it looks really damn good, man. The game is set in LA, and it feels very much like LA. There's apparently been more stuff going on than a zombie apocalypse because the city's taken quite a hit. There's some big holes in the ground and a bunch of damage that would far surpass anything zombies should cause. It's a pretty good environment. Along with all the damage, there are abandoned cars all over the place. Some homes are barricaded, and it appears this has been going on for a little bit. The environment also ties into the combat pretty significantly, as you can cause a lot of damage without even using your weapons. You can throw water on downed electrical wires, or do it the other way around and throw car batteries into water. Either option will electrocute enemies. You can set stuff on fire and blow stuff up. It's a lot of fun to see what all you can do, and I'd assume as the game continues to open up, there are more options available. The actual combat itself is also pretty good, and this game has perhaps one of the most satisfying attacks in any game I've ever played, which is this dropkick. I am straight up addicted to this dropkick. It's so unbelievably satisfying. The feedback on it is great, and sometimes when you hit a really good angle, you get slow motion, and it just never got old for me. As you level up, you'll unlock these cards that give you different moves and abilities and passives and stuff, so you sort of build your deck the longer you play, which I think is a pretty cool system, and it's also nice for people who like to look up the optimum builds and stuff in games they play. I imagine it's pretty easy to just look up decks for whichever character you want to play. There seems to be a really deep system for modding and customizing your weapons, as well as just a lot of different weapons in general. I only played for 2 hours and was very clearly still in the early stages of the game, and I saw well over a dozen weapons, possibly more than 2 dozen, so I assume there are many more to come. The storyline is surprisingly good too. I was actually invested. I like the NPCs, I think the game looks fantastic, and it was just a lot of fun. There are a lot of collectibles and secrets and things like that spread throughout the game for anyone that's into that. I am also one of those people. It does have multiplayer as well, so I might annoy a couple of my buddies into getting this game because I bet it's even more fun with more people. I'm actually going to keep playing this one for a little bit. I really want to see what it looks like when it opens up more and lets you actually explore the full map. This was a really cool experience for me. Again, I just sort of thought I wasn't into stuff like this anymore, so I'm glad I put this on the list. I definitely recommend checking out Dead Island 2, even if you think you don't like stuff like this. You might be surprised. Moving along, we have Dread Dawn, and this one's going to be a bit of a tough one because I really just don't think this game is good yet. And I don't think it's for lack of trying, so I'm not here to shit on this game for the sake of it or anything, but I'm also not going to lie about my experience with it. I remember seeing quite a bit of hype for this game a while back, maybe even a couple of years ago, and it was sort of building itself up to be the next Project Zomboid. It's very clearly inspired by Zomboid, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's also a bit of a tall order. I also want to say I like a lot of what they're trying to do here, but I think it just falls short in a lot of ways. I'm actually surprised to see this game does not appear to be in early access, because it feels very much like a game that's in early access. I think if it was in early access and it appeared to be getting enough attention, it would probably affect how I approach this review, but seeing as it's apparently a complete game, that's how we're going to treat it. Let's talk about what I like before we get into the bulk of the review. I dig the style. I think it's pretty recognizable and stands out quite a bit from other games like this. I think the world building is decent. I like the chaos of the world sort of going to hell, with a lot of other non-zombie NPCs running around the map, panicking, fighting, or being killed by zombies. There are some camps set up around with defenses built and stuff, and sometimes zombies will break through, and that's a pretty cool scene. It has a story mode, which conceptually I think is a cool idea, and well, I guess let's get onto the stuff I didn't like so much. I think the best way to sum it up is that I just feel like the game lacks. Everything lacks. Nothing really feels like a finished idea here. I also just don't really know what it wants me to be doing. I played the story mode for about 45 minutes, so obviously I know what it wants there, but then I switched to survival and I just didn't really ever feel invested in what I was doing. There are hunger and thirst mechanics and stuff. There seems to be building. The combat is whatever. I think the issue with this game is that it's not enough fun to lack this much immersion. Does that make sense? Like, all the games in this video aren't necessarily immersive, but some of them are still a lot of fun. This game seems to be presenting itself as a game with heavy immersion, but I just don't think it's here. All of the systems seem too basic, like they're just the start of the systems and they were supposed to be built on over time, but they weren't. There are also just a lot of weird things going on here. This tooltip in the top right every time you open your inventory was legit about to drive me insane after 20 minutes or so. I ran out of ammo at one point in my SMG and he just kept looping the reload animation until I changed weapons. When you vault the one type of fence you can vault, this is the animation. It's just like a little too flash game for what it presents itself as. Again, this style and look could be fine if it was used for the purposes of allowing you to really invest heavily in the other areas of the game, but it doesn't feel like that happened. As for the story, I like the idea of it, as I said, and I even like the premise, but the writing is tough. It's just tough, man. It's a tough read. It reads like a teenager wrote it, and it also does seem like it's been translated from something else to English, but that's not even what I mean. Just the content and pacing of it is not great. I really hate that I feel this way about this game. I wanted to like it so bad. I would love to see them keep working on it, because I think the foundation they've laid here could really lend itself to a top-tier zombie game. Project Zomboid probably wasn't that great when it first came out either, you know? I also want to make it clear, I know I've mentioned Project Zomboid a handful of times in this review, but I'm only doing it to give context to a point. I'm not actually grading this game against Zomboid. That would be wildly unfair. They've been working on that game for well over a decade now. Of course, it's better and deeper than this one. All of my issues with this game are based on the game itself and what it presents itself to be, not because I don't think it's as good as Zomboid. I'm going to keep my eye on this one over the next couple years and see where it goes, and hopefully someday we can revisit it and give it a different review, but as it stands right now, I can't say I recommend Dread Dawn, especially with all the insanely good games in this video. Up next is HumanitZ, and this one is pretty cool. It's another game that is very much inspired by Project Zomboid, and it seemingly wanted to try to do a very similar thing, but with more realistic graphics. It's doing an okay job of it too. The game does look pretty good. It's got a great pace to it, and it's fairly immersive. I really like the slower vibes here, and I really like a lot of what they're doing with this one overall. It's very customizable, which is always nice. There are several different locations to spawn from, all with their own challenges or lack thereof, and you can also just take a random spawn. There are a few scenarios you can play as well if you're looking for something a little more pointed. I really like the energy of the game. I'm not sure what things look like much later on, but in the early stages, it just feels like you'd think it should feel. The zombies are pretty good, although melee combat did feel a little janky at times. There were times where I really just don't understand how I wasn't landing hits, and it did cause me to take a few hits that I don't think I should have taken, so that's worth being mindful of. Sometimes the game was just a little clunky as well. Trying to pick stuff up on the ground was a bit of a pain sometimes. Those are really the only two things I'd say I didn't like, though. Everything else is pretty cool. The crafting and building seems solid, and there are a lot of things to build. There are plenty of pieces to build your own base if you're into that, or you can find a house or a building and settle in that way. I saw things like gardening sheds and stables to build that make me think you can just get a full-blown homestead going if you play long enough. There are a lot of different crafting stations to build, and there seems to be plenty to advance into. The hunger and thirst system seems solid, and I really like that you can control how much you consume when eating and drinking. The durability of items doesn't seem obnoxiously low. The battery in the flashlight doesn't drain super quickly. It's all fairly reasonable and pretty realistic feeling. I would definitely like to get a vehicle up and running so I could explore more of the map and see what more locations look like and what all there is to get into. It is multiplayer as well, and one I think would be particularly fun with someone else. I'd say this is definitely worth a play, especially if you're looking for something a little different than the typical first-person open-world survival type experience. This is an interesting change of pace from that, and there's plenty of content here to get into with devs who are very active, regularly dropping small updates and patches, as well as news, and they just seem very engaged. HumanitZ seems to be continuously growing and having new things added to it. It's noticeably different from when I played it a couple of years ago, so yeah, I'd say I recommend it. Next is World War Z, and this one is fine. It's a gratuitous zombie shoot-'em-up that, if memory serves correctly, is strikingly similar to the Left 4 Dead series, although I haven't played Left 4 Dead in probably 15 years at this point. It's got pretty solid gunplay, and the hordes are just insane. It's pretty cool how many zombies can actually be on the screen at once, and I never noticed even a slight dip in performance. It seems mostly designed for multiplayer, but I played with AI teammates and I have no complaints about how they performed. They weren't constantly dying or anything. Their target priority was decent. It was fine. It's probably much more fun with friends though. There are 3 categories of weapons. You have your pistols, then your rifle/SMG slot where the bulk of the guns in the game reside, and then a heavy slot for fun stuff like chainsaws, rocket launchers, light machine guns, assault shotguns, and plenty more. There's actually a pretty wide variety of weapons in the game, and you can level them up as you play and earn currency to do so, sort of old Call of Duty style, as well as unlock cosmetics for them, both in the form of sets of attachments as well as actual skins, and the skins are pretty dope. There are also so many playable characters, also with their own sets of skins. You can choose from several different classes on each character depending on how you want to play, and they all have skill trees so you can level them up as you go. The maps are pretty good. The story mode was whatever for me. It's more of a vehicle to play the game than anything worth getting invested in. I think there are 9 different stories, all with several chapters within them, so there's plenty of content here. And again, if this is your thing, then there's plenty of replayability. I don't really have a ton else to say about it. What you see is pretty much what what you get here. And I don't have any complaints, but this also didn't do anything special for me. If I wanted to play something like this, it would be Dead Island 2 10 times out of 10. But World War Z still feels like a really solid game, and if this type of thing is your vibe, there's really not anything to dislike about it in my opinion. So yeah, check it out if you like what you see. Next is Myst Survival, and this one is very interesting. We have a lot to go over here. First things first, it's an early access game, and it very much feels that way. I had a few issues in my 2 hours. Nothing game breaking really, but things like having all of my keybinds just unassign themselves randomly, and this weird reverse version of pop-in that some games have when they're struggling to render everything. As you get closer to a vehicle, every single vehicle actually, it'll look like it has all 4 tires, but then they'll just pop out and most of the time it won't have any tires. The reason this is annoying is because when you find a vehicle you want to fix up, it's guaranteed to need tires, and finding them in the nearby area can be tough. So to constantly be thinking you found some only to have them disappear when you get 7 feet from the car is pretty aggravating. Again, these aren't huge issues, but they're things that definitely need to be fixed. As for the game itself, I really like what it's going for. There's a pretty clear vision here of what this game wants to offer, and I'm personally really into it. It's very slow paced, leans heavy into the survival elements, it really digs into the details, and it's just a slow, gritty zombie survival game, which is what I'm generally looking for. The day-night cycle is very long, possibly the longest in any game I've played, and some of the crafting and building tasks you do basically just cost time. It's a pretty neat idea. It also has a pretty cool concept where this mysterious mist is what seems to have caused the outbreak, and you happen to be immune to it, and the zombies don't really come out in the daytime. They will chase you into the sunlight, but it does hurt them, so after a bit they'll retreat. So obviously being out at night is much more dangerous, but also the mist will just unexpectedly roll in sometimes during the day. So if you're out in the middle of the woods or something, you might be in trouble. I will say these zombies do sprint, which is always a bit of a turnoff for me. In my mind, zombies are rotting human bodies. I'm a much bigger fan of Walking Dead type zombies than I am 28 Days Later style zombies, but I don't reckon it's a deal breaker. Combat's pretty rough in this game. It's much wiser to just steer clear of it altogether in the early game. Basically, every time I found myself in a fight, I either lost it or I got seriously injured, which brings me to one of the systems in the game that I really like. There's an injury wound system that really impacts your character. I had a gash on my leg after a fight and I bandaged it up, which begins the process of healing. I decided to test out how sprinting would affect me, and sure enough, it injured me worse, so I had to treat it all over again and then take it easy for a while. My character had a noticeable limp and was slower to move, which was annoying, but I also love that. I think those types of things do wonders for immersion. I really like the crafting and building system, and there seems to be plenty of both. Again, this game really gets into the details, so you'll be chopping down trees, and then either working with the logs, chopping them into firewood, or turning them into planks. I saw a few little campers that had the option to be hitched and pulled around by a vehicle, which is super dope. The base system is really cool and seems to imply that at some point you'll be recruiting other NPCs to live in your base. The only NPCs I saw in my time playing were hostile. There are a bunch of what I guess are like raider camps or something scattered around the map that you have to be careful of, because again, the combat here is rough and you're not going to have a good time against them until you're a bit more geared. One downside that might be a deterrent for you is that it's single player. I don't know if there are plans to add multiplayer, but at the time of recording this, it's only single player. Overall, I'm very interested in this one. I don't think it's in a place just yet where I'm personally ready to sink a bunch of time into it, but it's one I will absolutely keep an eye on as the updates roll out, and would encourage you to do the same if you like these types of games. I am a bit curious to explore more of the systems I didn't really get too far into, like how bases work, finding some other NPCs to move them in, getting a vehicle running and stuff, so who knows, maybe I actually want to play it a little more than I think I do right now. I'd love to see it a bit more optimized and perhaps give us some customization options for our world similar to what a lot of these games offer. I think this one has massive potential, and once it's closer to a finished game, if it stays on track, could very well offer one of the better experiences of this kind in the whole genre. I'm gonna go ahead and say I do recommend Myst Survival, as the price point is fairly low, and I still had a really good time with it. Just be aware that it's still very much in early access. Up next, we have Project Zomboid, and this really is just the gold standard for zombie apocalypse survival games in my and many others' opinion. It literally doesn't get any more immersive than this right now, and for good reason. The game's been in development since 2011, and has continued to get very active support throughout its life. To this day, they're still working on huge updates to the game, and it just continues to get bigger and better and deeper. It took me a while to come around on this game. I initially didn't really like the way it looked, and the time or two I'd try to play it, it just felt so much different than anything else I was used to that I never really got invested. But a couple of years ago, I finally decided to actually give it a real fair shot, since all the feedback I was seeing for it online was so good, and holy cow. Once you get through that initial learning curve, this is just a phenomenal game. I don't think there's another game that captures what a zombie apocalypse would feel like better than Project Zomboid. It's quiet and slow and gritty, and the systems are all so well put together that if you don't actually respect this world as though you were really in it, you will absolutely not survive. You get punished for panicking or getting too comfortable, and not just with some arbitrary in-game punishments, but just by the natural order of things, much in the same way you would in real life. And I mean if you panic, not if your character in-game panics. They can enter a panic state, but it's still very manageable as long as you don't panic in real life, which might sound easy, but the amount of ways you'll find yourself in situations that you don't see a way out of will surprise you. This game is so amazing because not only is the world so well built, but because of all the different ways you can play it. You can really finally find out how you do in a zombie apocalypse, because if you can think it, you can almost certainly do it in this game. Whether you want to try to move around undetected, turn a house or any other building you find into a base, stay on the move, head out into the wilderness and build your own base, try to kill every zombie in the city, or anything else you might want to do, it's here to do. And every system in this game is so deep and detailed, you really get to do it your way. The zombies are also excellent here, probably the best zombies in any game I've played. They're very manageable in smaller numbers, but as they group up, it becomes more and more difficult to manage, and if you're not careful, you'll easily find yourself on the wrong end of a horde. The combat is sharp and makes a lot of sense. The food and hunger systems are great, and there are several other aspects of the overall health system you have to be mindful of. The looting is fantastic. I don't really know how it could be any better. The game will definitely take some getting used to if you haven't played it before, but it's perhaps more worth the time spent getting used to it than any other game I've ever played. Maybe this and Dwarf Fortress for me are like the two games that are difficult to get used to, but the reward for doing so is so substantial relatively. You can also play multiplayer, both privately and on public servers, which offers a whole different experience. I believe there's a decently sized role-playing community here as well, something I'd like to get into soon. There are several different starting locations and scenarios, as well as the perks and debuffs you select for yourself before each playthrough. The game is very customizable, so if there's anything you like or don't like, or think is too easy or too hard, you can change it all to your liking. The modding community is among the best in the biz here. There are some fantastic mods for this game. Some are smaller things like changing icons in the UI or being able to walk while you read a book, to some more impactful stuff like changing the whole inventory system or new maps and scenarios. I think this is not only the best zombie game on the market, kinda by far, but I also think one of the better games in any genre. It's just so well made and continues to get such active support, and really is only getting better with time. For anyone interested, I've done a couple of Project Zomboid videos on my JGigs XP channel that I really enjoyed making, so if you're interested in seeing me play it when I was quite a bit newer, I'll have those videos linked in the description. I can't recommend Project Zomboid enough. I hope that everyone that hasn't played it yet will give it a shot. It's one of those that if you're a fan of zombie games, you owe it to yourself to try. Next is Survive the Nights, and I actually played this when it first came out several years ago for about a half hour, which I guess tells you what I thought about it then. I kind of forgot about it for a while, and then I started seeing TikToks about it and a little bit of promotional material here and there, and it turns out they've been fairly consistently working on this game over the years. I was pretty interested to jump back in and see what had changed, as what I was seeing looked pretty good. I can say with confidence this feels like a completely different game than when it first came out. It's got a very similar concept to 7 Days to Die. You're basically just preparing for the impending horde nights that I'd assume get more difficult the longer you play. One cool thing is that when you create your world, you basically choose a template for that world, some of which are from the base game, and then a lot of which are directly from the Steam Workshop, so it's worlds other people have set up, and it just links directly to the workshop, which I think is actually a really cool idea. Some of the mechanics here are really nice. I like the way you interact with certain things, like having to set a canteen on top of a surface with a fire under it to boil it, or do the same with canned food to prepare it. Chopping down trees and gathering wood is pretty good, although I only really got to do that in the tutorial. That is one thing about this game. I found it particularly difficult to feel like I could really get established anywhere, as it seems very necessary that you find certain things like an axe and a hammer before you can really start meaningfully fortifying a base. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but it's something to be aware of. The tutorial is good and it explains the game well, but it also has you in a pretty set up house with all the tools and weapons you need to be successful, and I think I just expected it to be a little bit easier to get the basics going. Again, that's not a criticism, just a leveling of expectations. I think the map is really cool. It's huge. It feels like it's like PUBG scale. There's plenty to explore here, and the few locations I made it to weren't bad at all. I also stumbled across this Pong arcade machine while doing some looting, and I had to force myself to not spend the remainder of my 2 hours doing that. Isn't it interesting that I'll never intentionally load up a game of Pong, but if Pong is in a game I'm playing, I will absolutely play it, and usually for too long. As much as I like some of the things this game is doing, there's a lot that still needs quite a bit of work. The combat's very clunky. The gunplay isn't great. It isn't terrible, but it just isn't very good either. The sound design really needs some work. It's just flat out bad. I kind of feel like the crafting system needs a good bit of attention. These are all unfortunately things that really hurt the review. There are also microtransactions, which I'm not inherently against, but it just feels a little off here, perhaps a bit premature. And it is clearly presented as an opportunity to help support the development of the game, but you're already charging $20 for it, so I don't know, man. I don't guess I have super strong feelings about it either way, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Whether or not I recommend this game kind of hinges on whether or not you've played 7 Days to Die. If you're liking what you're seeing here and you have not played 7 Days to Die, just play 7 Days to Die. And if you want a little more info on that one, it's coming up later in the video. If you have already played 7 Days to Die and you just kind of want to play something similar but with some noticeable differences to a lot of the core mechanics that still offers a familiar experience, then I reckon give this one a go. It's not an awful game or anything, it's just kind of like the better version of this already exists, so probably just play that. Maybe in a few more years of development that'll change, but for now, that's my recommendation for Survive the Nights. Next, we have Vane, and I was very excited to play this game, and I have to say, this is it, man. This is the zombie game I've always wanted. It's still in very early access, but based on what's here already, this very much seems to be heading in the direction of exactly the zombie survival game I've been looking for years. And what's so impressive about that is that there are 2 developers. They found a way here to really let you get into the details without making it tedious, and the immersion here is already fantastic. Now, as I said, it's very much in early access, and it feels like they've really worked to sort of lay the foundation for many of the systems with the intention of making them all feel more complete over time. Combat, driving, certain aspects of movement, many elements of the game all feel very basic at the moment, but what they do seem to have dug into quite a bit here is the looting and world interaction. Everything you look at has multiple options of interactions of which you scroll through with a mouse wheel and then interact. It's very smooth and easy to use, and it's so much nicer than having menus pausing and popping up constantly, or having to do everything from an inventory screen or something. This is a large part of what I was referring to with the immersion. It really makes you feel like part of the world. It does seem very much like they are trying to be the ones to finally bring us the first-person 3D realistic graphics version of Project Zomboid that so many of us have wanted for years. Things like busting out windows and then needing to clear the broken glass before climbing through, but also needing to make sure you have something equipped to clear the glass with so you don't cut your hands. These are the kinds of details I think a lot of us have been wanting in a game like this. And I think focusing on these types of things first was such a good idea because it lets people who are playing it right now see the vision quite a bit better than if they worried about something like combat or driving right away. Don't get me wrong, these things are important too, but as far as really showing us what type of game they're trying to make, I really think they've done things in the right order so far. There's a quick tutorial for the game that is very nicely done. It takes about 10 minutes to play through and does a great job of getting you used to everything. I'd say this is the most excited I've been about an early access game in many years, and I hope they're able to continue developing this game. There's a pretty extensive roadmap you can access from the game's menus or from their Discord server, and they have a lot of really exciting plans for the game. I recorded this on November 10th, and it was last updated yesterday, and based on how regularly hotfixes and patches are dropping, they seem to be incredibly active in development. And speaking of the Discord server, it's also very active and growing quickly, so if you're interested in jumping into some multiplayer, I'm sure you can find some people in there. All in all, this game is shaping up to be incredible, and it's looking very much like the zombie survival game I've always wanted. I will be very closely watching the development of this game, and probably playing it pretty regularly throughout, so if it's not clear by now, I definitely do recommend Vane. It already offers a very different experience than anything else I've played. Moving along, we have Unturned, and this game has a surprising amount going on as you'll quickly learn through the tutorial. There are several systems in this game, and they're really not that bad at all. I know the graphical style is a little goofy, and in some ways the game itself is pretty goofy, but I think you'd be surprised how well put together this game is just based on looking at it. And for a free game, I'm not sure you can do much better. There are a few single-player maps. I messed around in one of them for about 50 minutes or so, getting used to the driving and the gunplay and survival mechanics and everything. Not to throw shade, but the gunplay here is substantially better than it is in Survive the Nights. I decided after messing around in single player to spend my last hour in multiplayer, and I saw this Panda server that had a lot of people on it, so I decided to hop in. I was expecting something very similar to what I'd just been doing, but with more people in the world, but apparently this game lends itself to a lot of different possibilities. What I apparently joined was a very developed, extensive, and huge Escape from Tarkov clone, complete with several different maps, a bunch of different vendors with quests, an EXP and ranking system, and man, it was actually a lot of fun. Again, the gunplay here is much better than you think it would be, so this ended up holding my attention pretty aggressively. I also saw that you can apparently work up to buying apartments and stuff in this server, and who knows what else. It was huge. I think it would be interesting to bounce around a few more servers people have made just to see what kinds of things are available, as this one was really impressive and it was the first one I tried. I bet there are tons of really cool servers of all types to discover. Everything you would want in a zombie survival game seems to be here, so if you aren't fussed about the way it looks, there's plenty here to enjoy, and again, it's free. I don't guess I really have a ton more to say about Unturned, but I see no reason not to recommend it as there's literally no risk, and you might end up finding yourself a server to get really invested in. Next is Dying Light, and I've heard about this game a few times over the years, and it's always been pretty unanimously positive, and now I see why. I don't know why I never played it, I just never got around to it, but oh my god, I'm hooked. This takes me back to the days when I was mostly a console gamer, and I just get fully invested in something like Far Cry 3 or Skyrim or Fallout or some heavily story-driven game like those that also sort of gave you an open world to do things in. This very much feels like those games, but in a really well-done zombie apocalypse, and if I'm honest, with quite a bit more polish. I really like pretty much everything about this game. I think it looks fantastic. I've been very wrapped up in the story since literally the opening cutscene. The voice acting is good. The combat and controls all feel really solid and impactful. Even in just my 2 hours, I can already see there's an insane amount of content outside of the main main story to do. This is like when you finally start watching a YouTuber that has millions of subscribers, but for whatever reason, you just never watched any of their videos. And then one day you're just like, you know what? I'm gonna see what all the fuss is about. And then you spend the next 3 weeks just binging their channel. That's Dying Light for me. I'm gonna be hooked on this game for a while. There's what seems to be a pretty deep crafting system with a lot of weapon customization, so I'm pretty interested in getting deeper into that. You have a skill tree that you decide how to advance, which is always nice, so you can customize your character to the way you want to play. The movement in the game is really cool. It's very heavily centered around parkour style movement, and it's generally suggested by NPCs that you get around using rooftops and other higher ground options, as the zombies aren't very good climbers. They also don't seem to have the best vision, which is a pretty cool take, I think. They are primarily attracted by noise here, so if you're quiet as you move around, you probably won't alert them unless you get right up on them. I don't think they're totally blind, but they definitely can't see very far. There do seem to be some mutated versions of zombies, which, as I mentioned, I'm not generally a fan of, but that really more applies to the more traditional open world survival style games, where I'm usually just looking for the most immersive experience I can find. I don't mind it at all here, as I'd imagine it ties in with the story to some degree, and it's a fun way of making some of the missions or other side quests a bit scarier or more challenging. There's also multiplayer, which I didn't mess with, but it gave me the option, even in the story mode, to have it set where people could ask to join my game and stuff, which all seems cool, but I just stuck with offline. There is some DLC for this one too, which it's looking like I will be buying, as well as a sequel, which is really exciting because I really loved my time in this game. I can't wait to get back to it. I'm definitely going to finish this game, and I'm probably going to buy Dying Light 2 as well. The combination of this being a brand new game for me, but also somehow really hitting me in the nostalgia center with how familiar it is to some of the other games I mentioned that I love, is really doing something special for me. I'd say Dying Light is a must play. If you've been putting it off like I was, go ahead and grab it. You definitely won't regret it. Moving along to another one of the top dogs in the genre is DayZ, and it does belong up there in the conversation with Project Zomboid. For those of you looking for a realistic zombie survival experience and a realistic looking game, it doesn't really get much more established than this one. This is really an amazing game. The learning curve on this one is quite steep. There are a lot of mechanics in this game that you won't even ever know exist unless you look them up or accidentally figure them out, like the way crafting works. For a lot of the early game crafting, it's a matter of holding the right items in your hand or having them on the ground near you and just looking down. So like here, for example, I broke this bush up into long sticks, and then if I look down, I have an option to break them into short sticks. People don't generally spend a lot of time looking down like that in these games, so I'd venture to say a lot of newer players of this game didn't even know you could craft items like this. It took me a while to learn when I was new. The crafting also generally just makes a lot of sense. It's a really great system and really fun to figure out. As I said though, the game is very difficult. If it's not zombies or other players that kill you, it'll be hunger or thirst or the wide variety of other things that can kill you here that I'll let you find out on your own. On official servers, you typically spawn in with a glow stick, a bandage, and a piece of fruit, and you're already kinda hungry and thirsty, so the clock is ticking. I love the environment here. It's such an intense setting. Everything is just so well done, you really feel the pressure of trying not to draw attention to yourself. Hearing a zombie or hearing another player moving around near you is so nerve-wracking. The spawns are typically around the outer edges of the map, and the further inland and north you get, the better the loot is, but also the better the players are. It'll probably be a while before any of that matters to you, as this is one of the more brutal early game phases of any game out there. You are going to die a lot. Then you're going to start figuring some things out and live a little bit longer, and then you're going to die. Then you'll really start getting the hang of things. You'll begin establishing yourself and figuring out food and water and how to get around without alerting zombies, and killing them easier when you do, and then you'll die. It's just so brutal, but there's something about it that's so much fun, and the sense of accomplishment the first time you're sitting by your fire, cooking some meat you hunted, fully clothed and with a couple of weapons, with full health, is hard to match. Something that really takes this game to another level is the modding community. There are so many different servers with very active communities that have modded the game into exactly the experience they want, and you'll certainly be able to find what you want as well. It's also not hard at all to mod the game. Generally, you find the game you want in the list, and when you join, it'll install all the necessary mods for you. I tend to find servers that stop the zombies from running, first of all, because as much as I love this game, I really don't like zombies that run, and then some other milder mods that don't really change too much else about the core gameplay, but add a few interesting things. I'll let you explore all of that on your own. It's also really fun with a friend. Spawning in for the first time with a friend when you're both new to the game and don't know the map and trying to find each other is an adventure on its own. You'll sort of finally figure out where you both are, where you want to meet, and then one of you will die on the way and you'll have to start the whole process over. It's great. There are so many layers and levels to this game. Some people can join a fresh server and within a couple of hours make it inland to get looted and set up a base. Others, like me, will spend a lot more time in the early and mid game, which is honestly what I enjoy the most. I'm not really interested in getting as many guns and as much armor and stuff as I can in PvPing and all that. I like the slower, grittier survival elements where I'm just trying to survive and find enough materials to begin building my own base, or find a cabin in the woods and turn that into my base. There are a lot of ways to play this game, both on the official servers as well as the modded ones, so I really think there's something here for everyone. If for some reason you haven't played DayZ, you should really check it out. Up next is 7 Days to Die, and this is another fan favorite for very good reason. It's got plenty going on, as any game that started development in 2013 should. I briefly mentioned this in my review of Survive the Nights, but the core of the base game is that every 7 7 days, there will be a horde that closes in on you, and your job is to prepare for each horde to the best of your ability, with each horde getting more difficult each time. I've put a few hundred hours into this game over the many years it was in early access, but this was my first time being back in since it was officially released. There is a ton of fun to be had here, whether you're playing solo or with friends. The building system seems to have gotten quite an overhaul. It seems as though they've basically given you the tools they use to build the game. It's a bit of a complicated system compared to what you may be used to, but it really does appear that if you take the time to learn the ins and outs of it, you could really build anything you could imagine. I didn't make it to a horde night in my 2 hours, as the day-night cycle is decently long, but there's still plenty to do between horde nights. You do have to focus on surviving, so establishing a reliable source of food and water is important, whether that be through scavenging, farming, hunting, or any combination of the three. As I mentioned, you can build to your heart's content. The exploration here is really good. The map is huge with different biomes spread around and a good variety in the location types. You can also take missions from traders that will usually result in some decent loot, as well as whatever the reward for the mission was. My initial mission from the trader bugged out immediately, which is kind of annoying, but I reckon it's to be expected. Even in its finished form, this game is far from being bug-free. Another new thing I noticed is that each location as you get close to it now has a name with a difficulty indicator, so it almost seems like every location is like its own little raid of sorts, which is pretty cool. I don't know what technically completes or clears a location, or if you can claim them or anything like that. I also found some underground tunnels that led to some cave systems. That was pretty cool. There's a lot of new stuff since I last played. There are a lot of different ways to defend against hordes, and one of the most fun things about this game is coming up with your own ways to do it. Whether it be through the most advanced take you can build each time to defend your base, or just digging trenches around your base, or just freeballing it and running around in the open and fighting. There are some things that irk me a little bit about this game still. None of them would ever be deal breakers, but even when I was in the midst of putting in my hundreds of hours, I'd always say that 7 Days to Die was the closest thing to the perfect zombie game I was aware of. But there were always things I wished were a bit different. This was also before I started playing Project Zomboid. Zombies will climb ladders and walk up incredibly steep hills. They climb on top of cars. That type of stuff annoys me. You'll occasionally get attacked by vultures for some reason. I hate that. I never really feel like they got melee combat where it needed to be in this game. The range is off and it just feels really empty. It's a bunch of little stuff along these lines that I think keeps me from being as big a fan as many others seem to be. Don't get me wrong, I still love this game. It's one of my most played games in my very large Steam library. There's just something about this game as a whole that really makes it difficult to feel the same type of immersion and tension that I get in something like DayZ or Project Zomboid or even Vane now. But again, overall, I still think it's a fantastic game. It's among the top of the zombie game genre for sure. There is a ton of replayability here, and you can keep a world going for as long as you like and things stay interesting because of how much there is to progress into and discover. It's also very customizable, so you can even turn off blood moons if you don't want to deal with hordes. You can modify zombie behavior and damage multipliers, XP multipliers, and so much more to really build the world you want to build. I think what intrigues me the most about modern 7 Days to Die is this new building system. It's kind of insane how much you're given to work with here. 7 Days to Die is of course one I'd highly recommend. As I said, it's as beloved as it is for a reason, and an experience that I think every fan of zombie games or even just open world survival games in general should have. Next is State of Decay 2, and this is a really damn good game, man. Everything about this game is so solid, and it really offers a pretty unique experience in the genre based on what I've played. It's very Walking Dead vibes in the sense that there are zombies, as well as a lot of other survivors, some of whom are potential recruits or allies, and some of whom are hostile. And just the way different locations get turned into bases and stuff, it all just gives me those vibes, and I'm so here for it. There's no real main character here in the campaign. You're switching around through your group of people. That starts off as two and will grow as you see fit moving forward. The world looks fantastic, and the atmosphere is really good. The world feels to scale as well. Sometimes a game doesn't really feel like it scales right, and I don't know if I know how to fully explain that, but I know some of you know what I'm talking about, so I'm saying it. I'm also not saying it makes a game bad either, to be clear. I don't think the scale in 7 Days to Die feels right, but the game is still amazing. In State of Decay 2, however, you really feel like you're in the world, and I love it. There are quite a lot of mechanics to talk about here. There are of course all the things you'd expect, and the game controls very nicely. I enjoy the combat and the movement, it all feels solid. The base mechanics go quite deep. I get the impression there are tons of locations around the map you could make your main base, and then you can also establish outposts that supply your base with resources depending on what the outpost is. If you clear a gas station and claim it as an outpost, for example, you'll generate extra fuel. You are limited on the amount of outposts you can have, and that amount is dependent on the level of your main base. There are also a lot of different types of stations you can build within your base, such as workshops, farms, infirmaries, etc., all of which serve different purposes and cost certain resources to manage. You'll need to be mindful of how much time you're spending on any given character and how much you're doing with them, as they will need chances to rest and stuff. The story's decent so far. I'm definitely more interested in just being a part of the world than I am pushing the story forward though, if I'm honest. I really love the atmosphere in this one. It's got such a good pace to it, and the way they've designed things like looting and the emphasis on stealth, along with the scale I talked about. It just feels incredible in this game. The tutorial's really well done too, in the sense that it still just feels like playing the game most of the time. In the very early phases, it's fairly linear, but the game does open up at a certain point. You don't really even realize you're still kind of in a tutorial. It's very seamless. Toward the end of my 2 hours, I'd recruited more people than could comfortably fit in the starter base. So one of my missions was to go find a new, bigger base. It suggests the diner about 800 kilometers away, but makes it clear you don't have to choose it. If you wanted to explore and find something you liked better, you could. I also don't think you're ever locked in. If you ever find a base you wanted to move into, as far as I know, you just can. Maybe there's a cooldown or something, but I don't know. I went ahead and just took the diner since we were reaching the end of the 2 hours, and honestly, it was sick. You have way more room for different buildings. There are watchtowers of sorts now where your people will just take shifts, keeping the area safe. Different bases seem to have different unique things built into them that offer different benefits and stuff. I'm sure it all goes deeper than I saw in my 2 hours, but it's all really cool, and I like how the other people aren't just standing around waiting to be switched to. They're managing things that need managing, like the farm, or cleaning, or resting, and it just looks like a functioning group should look. I think you can start sending people out on scavenging runs and stuff as well at some point. You can also have people follow you, so if you want some backup when you go out on missions or loot runs, it seems you can have at least 3 people following. I'd assume that's the limit, but I'm not sure. Inventory management's pretty nice. You can fairly easily give and take things from your followers, as well as load stuff into your vehicle if you brought one. The gunplay feels good. The combat, as I said, is pretty tight. Everything in this game is just really good, man. I don't really have anything in it I don't like. I don't even mind the zombies. They're not exactly the kinds of zombies I like, but it's fine. If there's one thing that's a little annoying, the AI of your followers can be a little goofy at times. They'll open a door when you're trying to sneak or bust a window for no reason sometimes, which can be a bit of a pain in the ass, but it's fine overall. State of Decay 2 is a game I'm absolutely going to sink some more time into, and I'd say this one is a highly recommend for me. This is a killer game. Next we have Scum, and this game is really cool and has a lot of great stuff going for it, but it's also really hard and frustrating. One sec, I just got to finish creating my character real quick, and done. Anyway, I didn't even fully complete the tutorial in my 2 hours. I was working my way through, got my spear and my backpack and my bow crafted, and then at the point it wanted me to go find a safe zone, I found out just how difficult the zombies in this game are to deal with. I respawned and decided I'd land in the middle of nowhere, as I'd probably be left alone a bit more and be able to get my bearings a bit better before fighting, and basically just repeated what the tutorial taught me up to the point where I was supposed to head to a safe zone. And I'll be damned if there weren't another handful of zombies just out here in the middle of nowhere. This is where I learned not only are they difficult, but there also doesn't seem to be any outrunning them. My third spawn, I just said screw it and ran straight to the safe zone. It was pretty cool, but there wasn't much for me to do there, so I headed out to go through the process for a third time. It's like the game is designed to just start spawning zombies on you after you craft a spear, a backpack, and a bow, because I got jumped on again, but this time it was only one and I managed to win the fight with only minor injuries. The tutorial now wanted me to loot, so I headed toward the nearest buildings on my map and discovered there are giant mechs to deal with as well. One saw me, started shooting at me, I hid in some bushes, got attacked by another zombie, and since I was exhausted from not eating for so long, didn't have the stamina to fight as well. I also think I kind of got robbed here. Some of these stabs should have definitely hit this bitch and they just didn't for some reason. Anyway, he messed me up pretty bad, so I limped into a building, narrowly escaping another mech that was shooting at me, only to find 2 heavily armored zombies just chilling. I thought I'd try to sneak up on one to see if there was a stealth kill option, but he turned around before I got to him, so I just took my hands off my keyboard and mouse and accepted my fate, and that was the extent of my experience. Spawning, getting basic gear crafted, and then dying, and honestly, as crazy as this sounds, I loved it. This game has some of the coolest survival and crafting mechanics of any game I've ever played. It gets really deep into the details and it just works, man. Everything feels pretty intuitive and smooth, and there's a ton of stuff to learn and items to craft and things to build. The map is huge. I think this game has potential to be really fun solo or with friends or even on heavily populated servers. In some ways, it sort of feels like DayZ meets Rust, but with far more extensive survival mechanics and really solid crafting. You even have to be mindful of your macros here. It's pretty insane. The game plays very nicely as well. I love the idea of the mouse wheel controlling your movement speed and things like holding control while you scroll, letting you crouch to specific heights and stuff. They had a lot of really cool takes here. This is one I'd really like to hop into with a friend and see what we can accomplish. I'd imagine the feeling of getting your first base built is pretty awesome, similar to what I talked about with DayZ. The early game just seems so punishing and difficult. That moment of feeling like you're established enough to at least survive, barring some unexpected misfortune, has to be so satisfying. There also seems to be a lot of content here and some good opportunity for role-playing servers. I remember watching a video a few years ago where 2 guys were suiting up to go explore some new portion of the map that had just released. I think it was like an old reactor or something, and they were role-playing it, and it was really entertaining. If you're looking for an immersive survival experience, I'd say this one has potential to be among your best options, with how detailed the crafting is and just how deep it gets into having to manage your nutrition and vitals and all of that. Scum is one I'll play more of for sure, and if you like what you've seen so far, you will definitely like this game. It's great. And to close things out, we have Zompiercer, and I really like the idea of this game. Your main base is a train that you travel through the world on, making stops to loot and stuff as you see fit, and building and improving your train as you go. It's kind of a neat idea, and I would loosely compare it to Raft in concept, where you start out on this very basic thing, moving through the world, improving the thing, and in turn your ability to survive as you do it. It's a really appealing gameplay loop, and there are things to like here. The game is listed as coming out in 2020, and it's still in early access. I didn't know it was in early access when I started playing it, but after about 15 minutes, I just assumed it was and ended up being correct. I did think that it came out this year, That's sort of the impression I got from the way the game feels and just how early access it feels. I did check, and it is currently still getting updated, so perhaps it's just a small team or something. I think one thing that really needs some work here is the tutorial. There really isn't much of one, and this is a game that is different enough that I think you really need to explain it a bit more before you send us out into the world on this train. There's just a lot to be confused about here. Like, I made this axe, but I never found a tree it was capable of cutting down. I tried a few different ones, and I never got any sort of feedback indicating I was making any progress. I decided to just see what would happen if I kept hitting this tree, and after losing almost half of my axe's durability, decided it wasn't doing anything. Sleep is apparently incredibly important here, but you don't start out with a bed on your train, and you can't use beds you find. You have to craft one, I guess. The problem with that is that you need 2 leather to do that, and not only did I not see a single piece of leather in my 2 hours, I didn't even see any animals that might have given me leather. It wouldn't be that big of a deal if this wasn't the penalty for being sleep deprived. Your screen constantly fades in and out of black, your stamina depletes much faster and refills much slower, and as far as I know, you're just kind of screwed. I still don't know the solution to this. You can stealth kill zombies, but the ranges all feel weird, so you'll constantly step up an inch too close and they'll turn around mid-swing and you won't get the kill. The controls are kind of wonky. For some reason, by default, spacebar is dodge and left alt is jump. Speaking of, I'm not sure why they even bothered putting a jump in the game because this is it. I've never seen a less effective jump in a game. I know I'm kind of dragging this game right now, but I do actually really like the idea. There are a lot of different building options on the train, and you seem to have a lot of control over customizing the way it looks and operates. The controls for the train are pretty fun. It all feels great. The game plays smooth for the most part. It just feels like a lot of obvious stuff has gone unattended to, and it makes it kind of aggravating to play because you're sort of having a good time and you have ideas about what you want to do, but it's just kind of hard to make any of it happen because the game is so unclear about so much. It's like you know you should be having more fun than you are. Even the survival mechanics, I didn't even know they existed until I read the description of the water bottle to see how much health it would give me and noticed it said something about thirst. Only then did I notice the tiny unmarked bars above my hotkey slots. The purple one is apparently your mood, by the way. This feels like a game that wasn't ready to be released in my opinion. I really want to like this game more than I do. I love the idea and would definitely sink some time into something like this, but this game just isn't there yet for me. It just needs more time in the oven before I could ever recommend spending any money on it. I don't even think it has multiplayer still after 5 years. Maybe we'll revisit Zompiercer after several more updates and see how things are looking, but for now, I have to say I don't recommend this one, unfortunately. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. I hope you found a couple of new games to check out, or maybe got the nudge you needed to try one you've had your eye on for a while. Let me know if you decide to pick any of these up, and I will definitely do another video on the genre in the future, so leave me some suggestions of zombie games you'd like to see in the next one. If you haven't and you feel so compelled, hit the like button as that can help get the video out to more viewers, and the algorithm thinks you'll really like the video on the screen right now, so see if it's right. And subscribe if you feel like you want to do that as well. I appreciate you guys watching, I hope you have a good one, and I'll see you next time.